So my name is Cole Zybert, and I am interested in pursuing a career in the banking and finance industry. So for the purpose of this interview and assignment, I decided to interview Mr. Tom Humphrey. Mr. Humphrey is the Vice President and a Trust Officer at Northern Michigan Bank and Trust located in Marquette. I asked my father for a recommendation as for someone to interview for this project, someone in the banking industry, and he suggested that I try and contact Mr. Humphrey, so I did that, and he agreed to interview with me. We decided to meet at Mr. Humphrey's office at Northern Michigan Bank. It was on Friday, March 31st, I believe, and it was a casual Friday, so he was actually dressed down. I showed up wearing professional attire and was actually a little bit better dressed than he was, so I was surprised and pleased about that. I knew right away that it was a relaxed and casual yet professional atmosphere. He made me feel very comfortable, and the interview went very smoothly. So the purpose of the interview for me was to learn about a possible career in banking. I wanted to learn some effective means of communicating in banking, as well as some of Mr. Humphrey's basic job functions, some of the requirements as well as credentials needed for a position similar to his. I wanted to learn some of Mr. Humphrey's past work experience and history, and I wanted some suggestions from him as for a future business professional, what I can do to set myself apart from some of the other students who are graduating and going into the business world. So, he helping advise a future. Oh, it's the same page. Okay. So the opening phase, it was a very casual and friendly introduction. I introduced myself as Cole. We shook hands and began to embark in some small talk. We talked about our personal lives. I learned a bit about his family and some of his hobbies and interests. I learned that he is an avid sports fan and he loves to golf. And we just sat there for about 20 minutes and made small talk before we actually began the interview. So some of the highlights of the interview, I learned that he has a family history of banking. His father, his grandfather, and his great-grandfather were all bank presidents, so he said at a young age he sort of knew in the back of his head that he was probably going to end up being a banker as well. He told me that he is a relationship manager. He deals with his clients as well as his coworkers on a daily basis, and it's very important as part of his position to be able to communicate freely with everyone that he deals with. He said that he has worked at Northern Michigan Bank and Trust for 19 years at his current position, and prior to that he worked at a bank in town and held a similar position. He graduated with a bachelor's degree in finance from Northern Michigan University in 1980, I believe, and he said he minored in history. He told me that client interaction is extremely important. You need to develop trust. People are potentially putting millions of dollars into your hands. He said it's amazing all the different people that you meet. Every case is unique, every case is diverse, and he said it's a really enjoyable part of his job to get to meet new people and not work on the same thing every day. I asked him what he dislikes about his job, and he sat there and thought about it for several minutes and decided that he really couldn't think of anything that he disliked about his job. He said it's a great place to work, he really enjoys it, he loves his coworkers, and he loves the clients and people that he deals with. I asked him what kind of experience is required for a position like his, and he explained that 2 years of an understudy training program, some kind of an internship at the very minimum, would be required to start a position similar to his. And again, he went into how his job is just different every day. He deals with different people, different situations, no day is the same, and he said that that's a very enjoyable part of his job. He said typically about 75% of his job is dealing in investments, and the other 25% is estate planning, so dealing with people's estates essentially. He said he spends about half of his day typically doing research, and the other half of the day is spent with clients, although that will vary depending upon the day and what's going on. He stated that communication is extremely important. He said that you have to be able to not only talk with your coworkers, but with your clients. You need people to trust you, and that's key. It's crucial to have involved discussions with people, and you've got to let people in and allow people to trust you. He said you must be able to ask the right questions, and you must be able to listen carefully to concerns and priorities of clients, because like I stated before, every case is unique, and he said it's very important to get to know people and know what you can do for them and how to provide a better service. He stated that verbal communication is typically used most often within the bank and with his clients. He said he makes a lot of phone calls. He talks on the phone every day to his clients. He said particularly the older folks love talking on the phone, would rather talk on the phone, and will chew your ear off for sometimes half an hour. He said that they also send emails and memos within the bank. He will send emails to some of his clients, but he said one important thing to never forget is the importance of a formal business letter, which I mentioned that we had written some business letters for class, and he said that it is a very valuable skill. He said you must be able to not only speak well, but write well. So I thought that was cool.
Me too.
Sorry?
Me too.
When asked about leadership, he said that he leads by setting a good example. He has been at the bank for 19 years now, and he said that people look up to him, and so he just comes in to work every day with a smile on his face and tries to be a good leader. When asked what I could do to set myself apart from other graduating students looking to enter into the business field, he said internships are key. He said try and find an internship in a similar field, and he said just any real experience that you can put on a resume is huge, goes a really long way. He stated that you always must communicate your ideas, never be afraid to let people know what you're thinking. He said there's no such thing as a stupid idea, so just be able to tell your story and let people know what you're thinking. He said that's hugely important. So the closing phase of the interview, I thanked him several times. We discussed everything that we had spoken about. He was very cool about letting me take notes. I'm a fairly quick note taker, and I did not record the interview. He said I could, but I felt more comfortable just recording them. And we went back and touched back on some topics that we had discussed that I wanted further clarification on. And I thanked him again for his time. I told him that I would be happy to let him know how the interview went, or the presentation went, and then I went home and sent a thank you letter after looking him in the eye and giving him a firm handshake, of course. I would have to say that the purpose of this assignment was definitely met on both ends. I know I learned a lot from this interview. I learned a lot about communications, some of the job duties of a trust officer and someone in the banking industry. He taught me a lot, great valuable insight, and I feel like he enjoyed being questioned because he got to see it from a different perspective, a student's point of view, and he could tell that I was genuinely interested and curious and wanted to learn, and I think he appreciated that. So I feel like we both took a lot from this interview. I also generated a new network, someone who I can call upon, and networking is huge, as we all know in business. And like I said before, I told him that I would be happy to let him know how this interview or this presentation went, and so I will do that. As far as an evaluation, I really wouldn't do anything differently. I felt very comfortable with him the whole time. I was happy how everything turned out. I was very pleased with the results, and I really learned a lot from the assignment and really enjoyed myself. Does anyone have any questions?